Hey guys, Probable1701 here, and today we are going to talk about what do you think are the top 5 most underrated seasons of classic Doctor Who. Now I already talked about the season I thought was the most overrated in another video, but I found myself having trouble limiting it to just one season for most underrated. So I figured let me do a top 5 because there's several of them that to one degree or another I think are underrated. And in fifth place, I put season 6. Now, I think season 6 is still regarded as good, but I think a lot of people kind of consider it Troughton's weakest, and I disagree. As I mentioned in my video about season 5, I actually like season 6 a lot. It's in the middle of my list. For Troughton, season 4 is my favorite, then season 6, and season 5 is last. But I see a lot of times when people are ranking like Classic Who series, like when I did my video ranking Classic Who seasons, 6 would be further down the list than 4 and 5 a lot of times. And that's crazy to me because I think 6 is really good. Because out of the 7 stories, you really only have 2 duds. You have Space Pirates, and you have the Dominators, which Troughton is still great in the Dominators. Fine, you got a couple duds, fine. But then you look at the other 5 stories, and you have the Mind Robber, which is amazing. I love the Mind Robbers. That's one of my greatest Doctor Who achievements for this year was getting to see the Mind Robber the first time. I absolutely love that story. It is a gem. And then you have the Seeds of Death, which is fantastic, much better than the Ice Warriors the season before. It's a really, really good story that I really enjoy. The War Games, which is a masterpiece. I love the War Games. It's a great, epic 10-part send-off for Troughton. And who doesn't love the final episode of that? And then there's another one I'm missing. Not the Croton. The Invasion. The Invasion, I think, is objectively Troughton's best Cyberman story. I prefer the Moonbase personally, but I think Invasion's his best one. It fills out its 8 parts pretty well. You could have cut it down an episode or 2. But it fills them out pretty well, especially holding off the actual Cyberman reveal until halfway through the story. It also has a really good couple good human villains with Vaughn and Packard. It's really, really good. I love the Invasion. So you have 4 stories that are like either masterpieces or right there knocking at it with the Invasion, the War Games, the Seeds of Death, and the Mind Robber. 4 amazing stories. And then in the middle you have the Crotons, which I think is underrated. I don't think the Crotons belongs up there with the other 4 I just mentioned. But at the same time, the Crotons definitely doesn't deserve to be down there with the Dominators and Space Pirates either. I think the Crotons is kind of hanging out by itself there in the middle. It's kind of the middling one. I think it's good without being great. It is a good story. It's a basic script, but well executed with some good acting. For the most part, I really like it. Next on the list is season 16, which is my least favorite Tom Baker season, but I like all of Tom Baker's seasons. Tom Baker doesn't have a bad season. Now, I know a lot of people might argue season 17 maybe, but I haven't seen at the time I'm recording this, I haven't seen Nightmare on Eden, or of Eden, whichever one it is, or Creature from the Pit, so I don't want to judge the story having not seen a third of the season. I don't want to judge the season having not seen a third of the season. So when the box set comes in next month and I watch it, then I'll do my thoughts on the season as a whole. But for now, I'm going with 16 because I think 16 is the only one of his that might not have just a true masterpiece in it. I think Rebus Operation, I can never remember, and Pirate Planet are both really good. I don't know if they quite achieve masterpiece status or just like, essential viewing status. But they're both great. They're my 2 favorite stories of the season. They're really good. Especially I like how, having just watched Pirate Planet, I love that Douglas Adams is such a perfect fit for the 4th Doctor and Tom Baker. His dialogue for the 4th Doctor is some of the best dialogue the 4th Doctor ever gets when it comes to wit. I think Douglas Adams gets that witty, clever side of the 4th Doctor possibly better than any writer. I just love the way the 4th Doctor talks there and how witty he is in Douglas Adams stories. And then you have Armageddon Factor, which I think is an underrated season finale. It's a lot better than the Invasion of Time. I really enjoy the Armageddon Factor. Stones of Blood is an odd one just because there are parts of Stones of Blood I really like, and then there are other parts of Stones of Blood I really don't like. So it's really hard for me to do that one when there's this aspects of it that I love and these aspects of it that I really don't, or that I just don't at the very least. But I still enjoy rewatching it. And then Androids of Terra is a weird one because I've watched it twice. The first time I really enjoyed it. The second time I really didn't, which I think boiled down to I didn't like Romana being just kind of reduced to a damsel in distress the whole story and getting captured, escaping, and getting captured. And I just felt like Romana deserved better as a character for that, especially considering I really like Mary Tam's Romana. I prefer Romana 1. So that kind of put me off there. But overall, I think it's a good season. I think it deserves a little more love than it gets. I don't necessarily think that people hate it. And I know some people seem to give it more credit than 17. But I think it deserves a little more attention, just specifically because I think all of Tom Baker's seasons are good, to one extent or another. Which brings me to number 3 on the list, Season 18. Season 18 is an interesting season because people either seem to love it or hate it. And I can never understand why it has the hate it does, especially since it's a very unique season. There's no other season in Doctor Who like Season 18. It's its own unique experience, and Doctor Who is a TV show about change and doing different things and not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I think Season 18 pulls that off well. There's only one actual bad story in Season 18, and I think that's The Leisure Hive. I don't really like The Leisure Hive. But it's still watchable. I want to be clear on that. It's still perfectly watchable. If I go back and watch Season 18, I do start with it and go all the way through. And then you have Meglos, which is an underrated gem. I love Meglos. It's my favorite Doctor Who story when the actor playing the Doctor has to pull a double act playing somebody else. I prefer Meglos over Enemy of the World. And of course, I've never seen The Massacre, but I do prefer it over Enemy of the World. I'm not saying Tom Baker does a better performance than Patrick Troughton, because they're both great. I just enjoy the story more, and I like Enemy of the World. I like Meglos more. Whereas Enemy of the World, I wouldn't mind being an episode or two shorter. I wish Meglos was an episode or two longer, because my only real complaint with Meglos is that it wraps up a little too early. The ending happens so fast, you're like, oh, it's over? So I wish it had been kind of 5 or 6 episodes instead of just 4. Plus, it has Jacqueline Hill in it, the actress who played Barbara, playing a different role in it. So that's a nice little nod to the original TARDIS team there, bringing her back in it. And then I like the fact that Tom Baker playing dual roles is actually pivotal to the plot. Unlike The Massacre and Enemy of the World, where it's just a coincidence, which my suspension of disbelief has a lot of trouble accepting. Why about a TV show about a time traveler who goes through time and space and can change what they look like? I have no idea, but my suspension of disbelief has a little issue with that. But with Meglos, since it is Meglos disguising himself purposely as the Doctor, it makes way more sense for there to be 2 different people played by Tom Baker running around, and I much like that it's pivotal to the plot. And then we have Full Circle, which I think is good. Not great, but good. State of Decay, which I think is a masterpiece. That is the masterpiece of Season 18. I love State of Decay. I love when Doctor Who does horror. It does it so well. So I love the Hinchcliffe era so much. I love Horror of Fang Rock so much. I even really enjoy Image of the Fendal, even if it's not quite as good. But State of Decay is a nice return to that, especially since it is an older Terrence script. And I love the script. I love the execution of the script. I really love that story. If there is one masterpiece in Season 18, I think it is State of Decay. And then, but followed right behind that, I also really enjoy Warrior's Gate. I think Warrior's Gate has a really trippy story. And I think the execution of Warrior's Gate is really good. I think for being like 1980 when they were making this, they pulled it off really well. I think it is really well realized for the time and for the budget the BBC has. And Warrior's Gate has a very unique look to it, unlike any other Doctor Who story. Warrior's Gate's one of those a lot like The Mind Robber and Ghostlight, where they're just very unique experiences and very Doctor Who experiences that any Doctor Who fan should see. And then you have The Keeper of Traken, which I really like. It's Anthony Ainley's my favorite performance by Anthony Ainley in Doctor Who. I love him as Treemass in this. I really, really enjoy Keeper of Traken a lot. And then Legopolis, which is good. I don't think it's great. It's definitely not my favorite regeneration story, but it's not my least favorite either. It's just kind of somewhere in the middle. It is a good send-off for the Fourth Doctor. Not a great one, but a good one. We'll leave it at a solid good. I do enjoy Season 18. Number 2 on the list is Season 24. I cannot understand why Season 24 gets crapped on as much as it does. Because I think more so than any season in classic Doctor Who, and possibly in Doctor Who in general, even classic or modern, I think Season 24 gets the most unnecessary crap given to it. It gets crapped on the most without reason, or without good reason, because it's not perfect, but half of the stories are phenomenal in it. You have Time in the Ronin. Is it great? No. Is it bad? Arguably. But when you know all of the background information behind everything that went on making that story, I think you become a little more forgiving towards it. When you understand the fact of John Nathan Turner having to approach this season, not knowing he was going to be showrunner, he's thrust back into the role when he thought he was leaving. He had no script editor. He had no doctor. So he had to cast a new doctor and worry about bringing a new doctor in. He had to get a new script editor. He had to get, he got Pip and Jane, because Pip and Jane Baker were so good at getting scripts in quickly. It was one of the reasons they were selected to write the last episode of Ultimate Foe, and which I think turned out pretty well considering those circumstances as well. But when you hear about everything Time in the Ronin was originally supposed to be, a Colin Baker story, it was supposed to be in the woods, and all the changes that had to be made for it, I'm a little more lenient towards it because of circumstances that would be beyond Pip and Jane's control. I think some of the effects in it are really good. Some of the effects in it are really bad, like the bees. But some of the effects in it, like the spinny ball thing, are pretty impressive for Classic Who. I think the Tetraps, or whatever they're called, or the Tetrabats, or whatever, I think they're realized pretty well. Kato Mara is obviously having the time of her life, and I am so... Trust me, this episode gets points for Kato Mara, because she just looks like she's having a ball, and I am there for it. Plus, we get to see Sylvester running around in Colin's outfit for a bit, and I love when a newly regenerated Doctor is wearing his previous incarnation's outfit for a bit. I really enjoy that. And then we have Delta and the Bannerman, which is probably my least favorite of the season. I'm not a big fan of this one. I don't hate it, but it's not one I'm going to go back and watch for a while. I don't really get into it. It makes a few choices in it. It probably reminds me of season 22 the most, with some of the over-the-top violence in it that just seems unnecessary, like the busload of people. I didn't see that coming, and that kind of disappointed me. But it's not bad. You could argue it is, but I just find it more meh. But then you have the other two stories, which are amazing. You have Paradise Towers, and Paradise Towers is the other one with the Mind Robber that are the two stories I have found this year that I've seen for the first time that just blew me away. Don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying Flux so far. At the time I'm recording this, I've seen the first 2 episodes of Flux, and I'm enjoying Flux. But Mind Robber and Paradise Towers, those have been my 2 jams this year. I love both of those stories. I really enjoy Paradise Towers. I think McCoy is really good. And he's very subdued. He's not everybody seems to think season 24 Sylvester McCoy is Time in the Ronin Sylvester McCoy, and that's not the case. That's the problem with season 24. Everybody thinks season 24, or the McCoy era as a whole, is Time in the Ronin. That's not the case. That's a huge misconception. I love Paradise Towers. There's a lot of dark stuff going on in Paradise Towers, especially if you're really paying attention. And in some cases, you shouldn't have to pay attention that hard. I think a lot of people just haven't seen Paradise Towers who are judging it. It's really good. And then you have Dragonfire, and I love Dragonfire. It introduces Ace, one of Doctor Who's best companions. I think the set design is really good. It brings Glitz back, and I love Glitz. I really am sad that Tony passed away recently because he did such a good job as Glitz. I love Glitz. I'm glad they brought him back for a final story. Plus, we get to see the end of Mel. That's fun for me. I like the creature down in the pits is realized really well. The effects on the creature are done really well. Plus, the fact the creature turns out to be friendly. which is a nice, especially since it's supposed to have kind of aliens vibe to it, but the alien is not actually evil. I enjoy that. And then Kane's death is really well realized. I love that. I actually saw another reviewer who was criticizing that, and I couldn't get it. Why they were criticizing. That's a very impressive effect for classic Doctor Who, and they're like, and I'm sitting here going, don't ever watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't ever watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. You're not going to like it. Yeah, I love Dragonfire. I think it's realized really, really well. I'm sure you can nitpick things on it. Yeah, it has the goofy cliffhanger. I get everybody has to point out the goofy cliffhanger. Yes, it's goofy. But you know what? If a lot of great Doctor Who stories have one or two objective flaws, well, Dragonfire has some objective flaws. So what? Vincent and the Doctor has some objective flaws, but yet you praise it. Go screw with it and point out its objective flaws. The reviewer I was talking about, who was criticizing Dragonfire for just bashing it way more than it needed, is a huge fan of Vincent and the Doctor and never points out any of its flaws. And it has them. I assure you it has them. So I love season 24. It's a great season. And number one on the list is season 26. And while I think season 26 doesn't quite get as much crap as season 24, season 26, I think all three of the McCoy seasons, honestly, a lot of times in ranking videos and articles I see on the internet, they rank low, or they're talked about, that era is talked about low, whereas in season 25 is really good, and season 26 is one of the best seasons in Classic Who. I would put it in top 10 for Classic Who. It's really, really good. Because all four stories in it are amazing. I love all of them. The only real complaint I could have is Battlefield's incidental music sucks. It needs to be rescored. I would love for Mark Ayers or somebody to rescore Battlefield. That and the cat people in Survival kind of have that Puss in Boots look, which isn't what the writer originally wanted anyway. That's just kind of how it was realized. But other than that, they're great. Battlefield is great. We have the Brigadier back. I love the story. Gene Marsh is great. Ghostlight is great. Again, it's another one of those Doctor Who stories. It's a very unique story, much like Warrior's Gate and Mind Robber. I love Ghostlight. You have Curse of Fenric, which is essential Doctor Who viewing. It is the essential Sylvester McCoy story I think people should watch. I think Curse of Fenric is a little overrated, but it's kind of like Sylvester McCoy's Web of Fear. I think it's a little overrated while also thinking it's a masterpiece, if that makes sense. For instance, I prefer Ghostlight over Curse of Fenric, but I would recommend people watch Curse of Fenric over Ghostlight. If somebody came up to me and said, which story should I watch between those two, if they hadn't ever seen them, I would say watch Curse of Fenric, but I personally prefer Ghostlight. And then Survival's really good. Anthony Ainley's best performance as the Master, in my opinion. I think he really got to play the way he wanted here and got rid of the camp and played it pretty straight. It's a great send-off for McCoy's Doctor, and him and Ace are just really clicking, which they usually are. So, yeah, I love season 26. It's one of the best seasons in Classic Who, and I can't understand why it ranks low a lot of times on these ranking lists. I think the people who do these ranking lists don't know what they're talking about. So that's my thoughts on 5 seasons of classic Doctor Who that I think are the most underrated. I would like to know what you think of my list and those 5 seasons, and let me know what your top 5 seasons are. So comment down below and let me know what you think. I always enjoy hearing from you guys. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to support what I do. There is a link to that down in the description below as well. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.